Yeah, man, how you doing? You good? I know you like that. I'm doing good. I know you like that. How long you been back, man? I see the girls.
Welcome into the Saturday Show, everybody. Hope you all are doing well on this Saturday morning up and down the Wasatch Front or beyond that on the KSL Sports app. This is the Saturday Show. That is Michelle Bodkin. How are you, Michelle?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Doing well. I'm Jake Hatch. How is everybody? And we got Sarah producing for us. Sarah, you got some news. I'm starting off. We're going right out of the gate.
Right into the weekly highlights.
And if you have anything other than what happened the other night, I'm going to be floored. But tell everybody what happened.
There's only one big thing. I got engaged.
Hey, congratulations.
Yes, so
That's
exciting.
Awesome news.
Yes.
Now, obviously, you've been working with the station for, are you at a year yet?
Not yet.
Okay.
Close.
Okay.
I think September is my year mark.
Very cool. Well, all the same, big moves, obviously. Congratulations. Glad your boyfriend finally stepped up to the plate. I know you'd been. I don't want to pull the curtain back too far, but you kind of like were hinting that this was going to happen at some point.
Yes, I knew it was going to happen. I just didn't know the how.
Okay.
I guess. Yeah, our date is in November, so I was like,
Sweet.
we gotta make this happen pretty soon here.
Get a move on, dude. Hello, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Make it happen. That's awesome. I'm very happy for you.
Thank you.
Yes.
All right, so she has the highlight of the week. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah. Nothing any of us say is going to top that.
Making moves like that, it's kind of hard to beat. But anyways, hope you all are doing well. Michelle, you got a highlight of the week for you?
So I've been off this past week. So if you've noticed that it's been a little quiet on the Utah front, that's why.
Enjoyed some downtime?
Just taking some downtime. But this is so lame. I think the highlight of my week was I finally got around to dusting my car and vacuuming and washing. Guys, it was really sad and gross. And one of my things is I am not a neat freak by any stretch of the imagination. But I do have kind of a little bit of a thing about my car because my car, people see me get in and out of it.
Sure.
Yeah. And so I try to keep that a little bit cleaner, and I just let it go way longer than I should have. So.
Well, here's the thing. My wife lovingly refers to my car as my mobile office because I'm going everywhere, here, there, and everywhere all the time. I've tried to make it a point to clean it regularly, but I'm with you. It's been minutes, so I need to get mine done here pretty quick. But hey, it makes you feel a lot better once it's actually all done, though.
It does. The unfortunate thing, though, is I also need to do something about my closet, and every time I've walked in, I'm like, yeah, I should do something about that, and I have time off, but nah.
The week off. Should I do that? Nah. Yeah. No,
I will try and do it, actually, once I'm done here.
Oh, hey, that's awesome. Well, I'm glad you enjoyed some downtime. Highlight of my week, honestly, was just hanging out with my kids. They're just both getting to the age where they think it's cool that things are going on in the world, essentially. They want to go out and play all the time. So we just had a lot of fun this week, just going out and doing our thing. So good to hang out with them. But hope you all are doing well out there, wherever you're tuning in from. By the way, I probably should extend this out. If you guys got a highlight of the week, send it in via social media. Be happy to give you guys a shout-out.
Yeah.
You want to interact with the show? We'd love nothing more than that. You can find Michelle Bodkin, KSL Sports. I'm at Jacob C. Hatch. And then Sarah, it's Sarah Hossain, correct? And her last name is H. I don't even know how to pronounce it.
No, you did it right.
Okay.
You said it right.
I pronounced it correctly, but spelling it, I couldn't. I didn't even know how to start there. Which, by the way, it's I don't know what your plan is with your fiance. You could have an incredibly long last name if things work out.
I'm not hyphenating it.
Oh, come on now.
For the sake of my license.
Because your license would be extended.
Yeah, I'm not hyphenating it. He's Polynesian, so that should say enough.
Oh, no.
It's a long one.
And if you put your maiden name, if you were to put it with, I was thinking like, that'd be a very long name. It's like this. Have you ever seen Jared Saltalamacchia, who played catcher in Major League Baseball? He's got the longest nameplate on a Major League Baseball jersey. It literally goes from the middle of his back to the other side of his it's just so long. So
yeah, no, I'm not high. I already decided that. I'm not hyphenating
That's
it.
not happening. All right, cool. Well,
Fair.
Let's actually have some fun and talk a little football. Also talk some basketball coming up on today's show. I'm going to be joined by a good friend of mine, Josh Neighbors, works for 365 Sports, as well as a couple other radio stations. He's going to talk Big 12 Media Days with us, give a little bit of a preview of what to expect next week, and we'll have a lot of fun along the way as well. So let's get right into it. This is What's the Big Deal?
Do you know who I am?
No, I can't say that I do.
I don't know how to put this, but I'm kind of a big deal.
Really?
People know me.
Well, I'm very happy for you.
I'm very important. I have many leather-bound books, and my apartment smells of rich mahogany.
All right, let's dive in. The Big 12 has announced both the preseason All Big 12 team as well as their media poll, the preseason media poll, Michelle, and I was lucky enough to be able to vote on both of those. Let's start off with the media poll. I want to get your thought on this. BYU going into the Big 12, 14-team league, and the Cougars checked in at number 11 on that list. Most people I had talked to, just kind of getting their feel for where they had voted for the Cougars. One told me they had BYU as high as 9. Another told me they had them as low as 13. So I expected them to kind of be in that 10, 11, 12 range, honestly. So checking in at 11 wasn't all that surprising to me, but what say you?
Yeah, I think that's probably a good spot. And I know BYU fans are not going to love me saying that. And it's no disrespect. It's just unknown. It's an unknown sort of thing. And I mean, here's the thing: is what matters is what happens out on the field. Like you always try and have a starting spot, but the whole point is you prove it out on the field. And so it doesn't matter what we the media think about, where you're going to start.
Come on now, we make all the call. No, just kidding. Go ahead.
Yeah. Yes, we have the power. Where we say you are, you will be. No. Yeah. I mean, BYU has a prime opportunity here, I think, to surprise some people if they want to. And here's the thing is I would not be shocked if they do better than 11. But I think, as you kind of said, that 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 range probably was a good spot for them and was kind of the most likely place that they would end up. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out and how the first year goes. It got me curious, and I was telling you off air, I tried to look into, where exactly was Utah placed when they made this jump. And it's a little, I was having a tough time trying to figure it out because at that time, the Pac-12 was still doing divisions. And so you voted by division. Utah was voted to come in third in the South Division, but USC
they were on probation.
So they technically didn't count, even though they got the first place votes for the South. So that technically put Utah at second in the South. Ultimately, I know they ended up fifth in the South, but I don't know when you add in the North rankings where that kind of put Utah to start with. But again, it's one of those things. It doesn't matter ultimately what any of us say. It matters what the production out on the field is. And that will ultimately be the tell-all there.
Well, now, and the thing is, similar to you, I was kind of thinking back when Utah entered the Pac-12, and I was thinking back on that. We all know that Utah came out of the gate pretty strong, all things considered, that first year. And you mentioned the fact that USC was ineligible for the postseason at that point due to NCAA penalties or whatever, sanctions, whatever you want to call it. So that changed the whole calculus for Utah's chances. But yes, the interesting part is that there were divisions at that point. So you all you really needed to do was to rise to the top of that division. And many of us will recall that first year.
They had a chance.
They were going into
Coleman Peterson.
Yeah, well,
Poor kid.
They were going into that game against Colorado. It was like, we win this game, we're playing in the Pac-12 title game year one.
Yeah.
And things didn't work out, obviously, and then UCLA snuck into that title game at, what were they, 6-6 or whatever they were. It was
their record wasn't horrible.
I don't remember what it was, but regardless, Utah had a really, really good start.
Yeah.
But then the next 2 years sunk back a little bit. The back-to-back 5 and 7s, obviously, that raised all kinds of questions about, okay, did they just catch lightning in a bottle for year one and then sink back? I think the bigger thing for this with BYU is they're picked in a spot where if you're 11th in the league, 6-6 is probably the goal here. Like that's just kind of where you project to be. And I think I've talked on this on my podcast. I've talked on this show that I think if you get to bowl eligibility year one here for BYU, it's a pretty good debut, all things considered, because you're making a jump that Utah's made, TCU has made, and they all had their issues in the early going. So I think the BYU, and I'm speaking as if I'm Kalani Sitake, but I think the thinking's got to be inside the program that, hey, we're 11th, we get to carry an underdog chip on our shoulder, and now let's go out and shock some people.
And that's kind of it, right? And that largely is the Utah model. And again, we've talked a lot about, we have people involved with BYU that are in the top coaching spots that understand what Utah did to eventually get where they wanted to be in the Pac-12. And so a lot of that's going to be deployed, I think, for BYU. Why would you not? Obviously, it took some time, but the model worked.
Yes.
There's proof in the pudding. The model worked.
Yeah.
So why you wouldn't, take a page out of that book? And part of that was, you may not be the most talented team, I was about to say the most deepest team. That is not good English, people. You may not be the deepest team. You might have more things to work on than other people to start with.
Sure, yeah.
But a chip on your shoulder can make up for a lot of sins.
Well, and the other thing about this is you and I both know that Kalani Sitake learned at the feet of Kyle Whittingham. He also obviously played for the legend Lavelle Edwards and always wanted to emulate those two essentially when he became a head coach. And Kyle's whole MO, at least early on during his run at Utah, especially in the Pac-12, was we're going to be the most physical team you play. We're going to beat you up so the following week, whoever you play is going to get lucky because you're going to be kind of nursing those wounds going into that next game. And to your point, that gives you, in a way, an edge over opponents because a lot of opponents aren't willing to go to that same level as you physicality-wise. Kalani's talked during his time at BYU that he wants his team to be physical. He wants them to go out and just wear on teams. And have there been teams of his that have been better at that? Absolutely. But I think this team in particular, just with the strength of schedule component being added into this, they do well to lean more into that and say, you know what, we are going to be one of the most physical teams you face. Emulate what Kyle did early on, because that's when Kalani was at Utah. That's kind of what they did. His defenses that he was coordinating for Kyle were legendary for beating people up. And that's, I think, something that he realizes, you know what, yeah, we may not be the fastest, we may not be the strongest, but what we're going to be, we're going to be the toughest team out there, and we're going to make sure that you feel us. Yeah,
well, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, because you know the roster a little bit better than I do, but I have seen some things out there, that there's some questions about, especially the defensive backfield for BYU, that it might be a liability, especially with the types of offenses that the Big 12 tends to like to run, which is a little more high-powered, down the field. It's a little bit of a bad combo, but what BYU can do to kind of make up for that until they get some of the more, brain fart, better in the backfield, in the defensive backfield, is be strong on the defensive line and get home and cause some disruption and havoc plays up front.
So let me just insert here. In some ways, they've almost got it backwards at BYU right now. On paper, I'm actually of the opinion that the secondary may be their strength on defense right now. I'm saying right now, like going into the season, because you got two high-level safeties in Malik Moore and Micah Harper who are going to be very, very good on the back end. They're able to clean stuff up. You bring in an FCS All-American and Eddie Heckard from Weber State, who has played in Jay Hill's defense his entire career. He knows his frontwards and backwards. And then Jacob Robinson on the other side was the hero of the bowl game last year. So your front line, your front four guys in your secondary are pretty good, and I think there's some decent depth there. But to your point, Michelle, the history suggests that BYU typically is better up front. The weakness last year was up front.
That is true.
So they've tried to go and address that. They brought in Isaiah Banya and Jackson Cravens, the former Utah Ute, for a hot minute until he went to Boise State, to bolster the defensive line. A.J. Vongpachan comes in from Utah State to be the rock in that middle of the linebacking core to hopefully stabilize that. So in theory, I get what you're saying, because the history of BYU suggests that the secondary typically has been a weak spot funny enough, I think going in right now, the secondary, at least day one, in my opinion, is probably the strongest of all the units on defense, whereas I think the defensive line and linebacking cores kind of got to coalesce around each other and get better as the season goes along.
Well, then we're talking about BYU. They're just going to have to do exactly opposite of what I just said.
But they need to get to where you're talking about.
Right. But it's just kind of one of those things, and I know that Utah had, I think, the opposite problem when they started. They were very strong on the lines, maybe didn't necessarily have the depth behind those starters, which is where they kind of got into trouble towards the end of the season. But it was the skill players, the DBs, wide receivers, more of those types of players that they struggled to have and get. And so they had to be big bad bullies. If what you're saying is true, then plays might get away from them up front to start. But that means that the guys in the back are going to have to kind of make up for some of that and cover some of that. I think the important thing when you make a jump like this is that you at least have something that you're strong at.
Yes.
You're probably not going to be strong at everything making that leap. I don't think we've seen anybody do that yet. But have your thing. And so if that's your thing, then be elite at it.
Well, and to your point, yes, you need to have something you can rely on. The other thing about this is, and let's acknowledge the elephant in the room, is BYU's defense was not great last year. 96th in scoring defense. Average rush against them on any given down was in the 90s. The metrics across the board were not kind to BYU. We had Darnell Dixon on DJ and PK earlier this week to talk about BYU going into the Big 12, and he was like chuckling to himself, and he pointed something I had either forgotten or not noticed. When they played Arkansas, you remember that game in October, Arkansas came out here. Arkansas scored on 8 straight possessions against BYU.
Oh, Lord. 8
straight. And that's the game after which, if you believe the reports, that Elisa Tuiaki offers resignation to Kalani Sitake. Kalani essentially said, I'm not letting you go. You're gonna be the defensive line coach, essentially. I'm going to step in and essentially help you as the defensive coordinator and get us through the rest of the year. But they knew that they had a problem. Jay Hill knows defense frontwards and backwards. Kalani Sitake knows defense frontwards and backwards. They learned it at the foot up there of Kyle Whittingham. They learned underneath his tutelage. So they know what good defense looks like. I'm not saying the defense is going to be elite this year for BYU. I'm far from it, honestly, I think. But I think they can go from that mid-90s ranking in terms of overall college football. They can get to the 60 range. I think that'd be a market improvement and would give them a much better opportunity to get to bowl eligibility, because I think the offense, even with some of the turnover on that offense, Keaton Slovis coming in, et cetera, I think the offense is going to be very, very strong and should be able to help them win some games if that defense can, as I said, jump up into the 60s range.
Yeah, I think just a little bit of, I think maybe even into the 70s. Probably would make a marked difference for BYU, and probably be good enough if the offense can keep up.
Yeah.
If the offense can't keep up, we might be talking about a different story. I'm so fascinated to sit back and actually watch this without like really having to like deep dive think about it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and not. I kind of did with Utah. Like so when they made that jump, I was straddling still just like being a fan and a student.
Sure.
And then getting my feet wet. So it was kind of an interesting time. It's going to be, like I said, I'm kind of looking forward to just being able to sit back and kind of watch this more as a fan, and just kind of take in what this process is and what it's going to look like. But it's I've said this so many times. It's exciting, but it's going to be frustrating too. Like, but I think the best advice I can give is anyone involved with this, whether you're a fan, administration, coaches, players, like just soak in as much of this as you can, because it's a very unique situation and opportunity to be able to grow your brand, so to speak, like that. And just remember the tough times, because once you do kind of figure it out, the figuring out part is so much sweeter when you can go back and say, dang, like, look what we came from. That sucked in the moment, but like, how awesome is what we're doing right now? So,
well, and that's the other part about this is this is a whole new era of first for BYU. Their first Big 12 Media Days. I'll be down there for it next week. Their first Big 12 game is going to be in Lawrence, Kansas. Like, I was on a radio station in Lawrence yesterday talking about this very thing, and they're like, well, what's the thoughts? I'm like, BYU fans are ecstatic. That's the thing about this. They are super excited simply to be at the Power 5 level. This is what they've dreamed of having for years. They saw Utah make the transition. They saw TCU make the transition, and they are like, hey, we want that too. And they're now going to get that. Now, you mentioned, are there going to be ups and downs? Oh, absolutely. But to your point, keep the perspective on the fact that this is what you dreamed of.
Yeah. It's
not going to go swimmingly right out of the gate. If it does, I'd be worried in a way. Because
yeah. I mean, if all goes well for you, like from the get go, then just enjoy
you're living a charmed life. Yeah,
exactly. I would not guarantee that to you. And again, this is coming from a little bit of experience, because I think there was a little bit of expectation that Utah would just, well, it depended on who you asked. If you asked the people that were there, Utah was going to be the doormat and, an easy win year in and year out. If you asked people at Utah, not necessarily Kyle Whittingham, because he made it very clear that he knew this was not going to be easy and that people were delusional. Yeah. But like the fan base, and I think even like some of us media personalities, and even like people kind of a little more familiar with Utah, not necessarily fans of Utah, but just like familiar with what Utah does and what their brand is, I think maybe expected them to be a little more dominant out of the gate. And they kind of were, but they kind of weren't. And so I think it was one of those things, like Utah up to that point had been enough of like these bigger name brands that it was like, well, how hard can it be? Well, it is considerably harder when it's literally week in and week out. And you are going against people that you're on a more even recruiting level with, and it's just, you're competing with everything. You're competing for good coaches. You're competing for good players. You're competing out on the field to try and win. Like there's everything's a competition. And it's much harder because you're with people that can also offer the same things. Sure. And so you've kind of got to figure out, what is your niche? What is your sell? Who are you going after? What's your identity going to be like? And these are not necessarily questions that sort themselves out right out of the gate. It's, I think you do kind of end up having to have a bit of a feel for what it is you're doing, where you are, who you're competing with, some of that kind of stuff. So it's going to be a fun adventure. I'm so excited.
Well, to your point, that's absolutely I think what you got to keep it all in perspective here and look forward. The one thing that I think some of us have overlooked, I've overlooked it myself, is the fact that BYU, as compared to Cincinnati, Houston, and UCF, who are coming in alongside them, BYU has far and away played far more Power 5 opponents in the last 3 or 4 seasons. They played 7. That was the year they went 5-0 against the Pac-12. Was that 2021 or whatever it was?
Yeah, it was 2021.
They went 6-1 that year against Power 5 opponents. So yes, your point is well taken. They're not wholly unfamiliar with playing Power 5 opponents on a regular basis in Independence, but 7's one thing. 10 and having 10 straight, which is what's going to be the case. You're going to open up with Sam Houston State, Southern Utah, and then it's off to the races. It's going to be interesting, but there are some people out there, and I've overlooked it, BYU's not unfamiliar playing at this level. The question will be, okay, now when it's, as you mentioned, a week in and week out thing, how do you hold up?
Exactly. And that's I think what Utah learned and people involved with Utah kind of learned. Outside, like I said, outside of Kyle Whittingham. Kyle Whittingham called it.
Sure.
We should have listened to him.
Should always listen to Kyle. There's no doubt about that. All right. We will come back on the other side. We're actually going to talk a little bit more big picture on the Big 12. We're going to have a good friend of mine, Josh Neighbors, works for 103.7 The Buzz down in Arkansas, also the host of the Neighborhood Watch, covering the Big 12. It's a podcast, part of the 365 Sports Network. He'll join us next. This is the Saturday Show right here on 97.5 FM, the KSL Sports Zone. Welcome back to the Saturday Show here on 97.5 FM, the KSL Sports Zone. Jake Hatch here, Michelle Bodkin there. Welcome on in. Excited to welcome in a good friend of mine, a guy I've done podcasts with many, many times. He's also a producer down there in Arkansas for 103.7 The Buzz, but now host of the Neighborhood Watch, part of 365 Sports and their network. He is Josh Neighbors. Josh, thanks for taking some time. How are you, sir?
I am well. Happy Saturday to you all.
Same to you. So getting ready for Big 12 Media Days next week. I know you've got a vested interest in this, obviously covering all things Big 12. Give me your initial reaction. A lot of people, Texas picked to win the league for the first time in 4 years. Cue the hashtag Texas is back conversation. Mm-hmm. Your thoughts on Texas being the favorite?
Yeah, I picked them to win the league. I was with everybody else. I had them in Kansas State 1 and 2. And I think it's a combination of things. Number one, this group seems primed and ready for it. From a talent standpoint, there is no debate. They're the most talented team in the Big 12, full stop. And then also, it's the Big 12 as a conference has gone in the last 3 years. 6 different teams have played the Big 12 championship game. So it kind of makes sense that, cyclically speaking, it's Texas's turn. And there have been a couple teams that we've been able to see coming. I think K-State last year was a really sexy pick in the preseason this time of year. And then TCU, we didn't see them coming. So I think Texas is kind of the one that we do see coming this year, and it makes sense from a talent standpoint. Up front, they invest in a lot of the recruiting resources, their scholarships and whatnot. Up front, if you look at those recent recruiting classes, guys like Cole Hudson and Kelvin Banks were big members of the last couple recruiting classes Sark has had, and those guys are now starring in some big roles, guys like Devondre Sweat and folks like that too. So both sides of the ball good up front. They have probably the second best receiving core in the country. I think Ohio State stands alone, and I think you definitely make the case Texas is number 2. And I think Quinn Ewers is kind of in the spot where first year up and down, injuries, inconsistent play, but guys get older, they get better, and I think he's so talented that you have to play pretty poorly to screw up this situation. I actually think no matter who plays quarterback for Texas, that they should be fine. Between Malik Murphy and Quinn Ewers, they should be able to find a pretty good quarterback. So it feels like a team that lost a bunch of close games last year, if they can turn 2 of those into wins, they'll be right in the Big 12 championship game.
Josh, this is kind of an interesting year for the Big 12 because you have the 2 teams that are eventually moving on to the SEC, but you're also welcoming in 4 new teams. Just big picture, how do you kind of expect everything to play out in the Big 12, and how do you think that kind of sets up for the years following after Texas and Oklahoma finally leave?
Yeah, this is going to be it's a great point because this is going to be a unique season. People use the word unique a lot, but this is I can't think of a situation across the country where it's we've seen 4 incoming, 2 leaving, but they're all stuck together for the 1 year. The new wife has moved into the house. The old wife has not moved out yet, and we're going to do it for 6 months. We're going to make this thing work, I guess. Yeah, it's going to be fun. It's going to be interesting. I think, regardless of what happens, Oklahoma and Texas fans will complain about the officiating on the way out. I think that's something that's natural. It already happened last year. It's something they feel like they can blame. And I know everybody's going to be wanting to take their parting shots at OU and Texas. Ironically, though, I mentioned the Texas part of it. There is a good chance that Texas wins the Big 12, and I don't think from my perspective, it wouldn't be them sticking to the conference thing. It'd be part of that natural progression and turnover this league experiences. But nationally, people will be like, there it is. Texas showing why, they don't belong in the conference anymore. They've outgrown the Big 12, stuff like that. So I'm tracking that storyline for sure. But The newcomers, obviously, BYU very much included in that, too. You want to see what it looks like when you get a full Big 12 schedule, 9 games against the Power 5 schedule, 1 year removed from being in a G5 conference.
Josh Neighbors joining us, host of Neighborhood Watch, the podcast, part of 365 Sports, also working for 103.7 The Buzz down there in Arkansas. And you mentioned BYU, Josh. Cougars picked 11th. I think most people I had talked to had them pegged anywhere between 9 and 13, depending on the people I had kind of reached out to and gotten their feel for. Where did you have the Cougars ranked, and you think 11th is the right spot for them?
Yeah, I had them somewhere in that range. I forgot exactly where I put them, but somewhere in that range. And when you pick teams at that point, a 14-team league, like there's going to be some variance there.
Yes.
I think we all know that. But Jake, you and I have had this conversation a lot about BYU's almost quasi Power 5 schedule. It's probably as close as any of the new schools got to playing a Power 5 schedule. Just because of the way they scheduled, how they scheduled, some of those remnants are still there, right? I mean, they're actually going to be taking a trip to my neck of the woods and coming to Arkansas this year. So they still have those remnants, like we talked about. You all are more familiar with this year's team than I am, but it's that aspect of it, right? It's the idea that, all right, you replace those schools that were G5 schools, and now it's an entire Power 5 schedule. And I think about last year's Big 12, the schools that were down, Iowa State was not very good, but they had a gangbusters defense, a terrible offense, but they made life hell for teams trying to score the football. It was really challenging, and they had one of the best defenses in the league, and one of the best defenses in the country. If their offense had scored, I think, 20 points and, their first at least 20 points their first 10 games, they would have won like 8 of them, right? I mean, that's kind of a bad team in this league. West Virginia was bad last year. They still swept the Oklahoma schools. That was a bad year, though, for West Virginia. The floor of this conference has been raised, and I think that high floor is actually the more challenging part, as opposed to some folks might think the ceiling is. But, going up against those top teams, I think ultimately the week-to-week grind of playing a higher floor. I mean, good Lord, Kansas, Jalen Daniels might be the best player in the field in 11 of the 12 games they play this year, right? I think that's part of this conference now, too, is that KU is competent, and that kind of changes the entire landscape because there's no bottom anymore at this point. Every school feels like has a decent coach or decent talent, and that is what all of those newcomers will have to deal with and square with in year one and moving forward.
Josh, from your perspective, what are your expectations for the 4 newcomers into this conference as someone that has covered the conference very well and for a long time without the 4 newcomers?
Yeah, my expectation is UCF probably has the best chance to be the this year. It feels like they are the team everybody's looking at because their talent level is pretty high, and also the coach. Gus Malzahn, to me, I'm a huge Gus Malzahn fan. I like him a lot. I think he's a very good coach. I think that he has invested a lot in that program. That program has invested a lot in itself. And I think because of their location, they are a school that is in SEC country that is going to go now play games in Texas as well often to, widen that recruiting footprint, widen their scope being now at a Power 5 level. And also, too, they, being an SEC country, they can keep kids in and around home who are either SEC transfers or potential SEC recruits that want more PT or want to move back to home in Florida. And that's a huge benefit for them. So when you look at who gains the most from kind of the geographic changes, I think they do. And I also think they're a team in year one that's best fit to win just because of the amount of talent and who their coach is. This is not unfamiliar territory, and not just not unfamiliar territory. He's had success in the most difficult league in the country, in the SEC. So, the Big 12 is a different animal, but he is uniquely qualified, I think, out of the 4 coaches to come in and do well.
Josh Neighbors joining us, host of Neighborhood Watch, the podcast. Check it out. It's great stuff, 5 days a week, covering all things Big 12. And Josh, you mentioned UCF, but the other 2 newcomers in Houston and West Virginia picked right around BYU, I believe 12th and 13th in the poll. You mentioned the fact that all of these newcomers are coming in. It's kind of that weird range. I actually think your analogy is absolutely fantastic. The old wife hasn't moved out, but the new wife, it's a great analogy. But with these newcomers, do you think any one of them, or do you think the group of them have the capability of influencing the conference race this year? Does that make sense?
Yeah. So, you kind of almost look at the November games like as a chance to play spoiler.
Yeah.
I have a tough time seeing. I mean, maybe UCF could do it, but like we saw Kansas last year put together an amazing first half.
Mm-hmm.
Look at what happened to Kansas in the second half of last year. And a lot of schools were banged up, but that depth at a Power 5 level, that stands out late in the season. That's what sets you apart and allows you to finish the year off well, is building depth. And these schools, they can try the best they can, but when it gets late in the season and guys go down and, you've got some guys that, maybe aren't Power 5 level or Power 5 level yet and they have to go and play, that's what's going to – that's really what separates it. Those November games when the guys are tired, you've been playing 6 or 7 straight weeks, you got injuries and stuff, and that depth is where I want to see it. So I'd say if one team has a chance to influence, UCF, I feel like BYU with some of their home games might have something to say about this race and those difficult environments. I think that BYU environment is the one that folks are most excited to see opposing teams go into. I tend to agree. Cincinnati, I'm not super high on that team for this year. Just Scott Satterfield kind of backs his way into that job with Luke Fickell leaving. They do have some playmakers on defense, but I'm just not sure how good the offense is. And are we really sold on Emory Jones starting quarterback? So I've got questions there. And then, I think Houston, beyond moving to the conference, it's great they've got Dana Holgorsen, who's had success in the Big 12 before, but they underachieved last year in a big way. And they lost, Clayton Tune and Tank Dell off the offense. Bring McCaskill back off the injury. Donovan Smith comes as quarterback. I've got some pretty serious questions. Now, they've made a considerable investment in that football program. I think Houston long-term is going to be A-OK. But this group, I just don't know what the influence that Houston will have on it. So I'd say BYU's got a good chance for home games, and if you want to toss a team in there to possibly, be around the Big 12 title conversation, I'd say UCF. But I think most folks in the media, and I'll include myself in there, don't believe those schools will contend, not just because they're new, but because it's that week-to-week grind, and especially because the Big 12 elevated the floor of the conference the last couple of years. It makes it more challenging now.
Obviously, there's a lot of excitement here with the move to the Big 12. And I'm sure, BYU fans tend to show up and show out anyway, but there's going to be that added level of excitement because there's the newness involved. What are some things that you think fans should make sure that they check off the list year one heading into the Big 12?
Well, I would say, enjoy it, right? Just enjoy the fact that this is kind of, this journey, it's to the Power 5 is an odd one. And I will say this, I was having a conversation with somebody, Paul Catalina from 365, about what the future of college football is and college sports is. And it's really unclear. It's all driven by television, and we know how kind of fickle the television thing can be and what they want and all kinds of stuff. And will there be a college football super league, much like Champions League in soccer? I don't think that's out of the question yet. So I would say enjoy it because there's no guarantee that the Big 12's place in college football, especially enjoy it if you're a new fan. But this is a conference that felt like they were on skates a few years ago, right, with Oklahoma and Texas leaving, and now there's some solid ground. So enjoy that feeling because we never know how long it lasts for. But yeah, the idea, the fact that you can go on road trips now and go to places, and BYU's always going across the country and going, really cool places. But thinking about this year for BYU, the opportunity to go to places like TCU and get one game at DKR, and you get to go to place like Oklahoma State if you want to go travel and go see a game at Stillwater. All of those things have now become available, and getting to know the fans who are excited to go to Provo. That's part of this experience. Going to be kind of the mingling of the fan bases, and we'll see what natural rivalries develop. I think there is a thought that the God-fearing schools, if you will, TCU, Baylor, and BYU might have some kind of rivalry, right, because of the religious component. But, I think I'm excited to see the natural rivalries that develop, throughout time and what kind of dictates that, whether it's in-game stuff, outside things like that, coach comments, all that stuff is exciting.
Now, Josh, you and I have gone back and forth on this, but obviously the ongoing talk out there and chatter is about conference realignment. Dennis Dodd writing yesterday that San Diego State is not in the mix for the Big 12. Where do you stand on all this? Do you still think the Big 12 makes a move before long, or do you think they stand pat, at least for the time being?
Yeah, Brett Yormark made a comment about 14. I think there's a balance between creating a voting block almost, right? Having 14 schools is good, and also if you were to pick up more Power 5 schools, that's good. It's like, hey, are you going to have down the line, like we were talking about, are you going to have a college football world where TCU and Oklahoma State and Arizona and Colorado and all these schools are just not involved, right? In the big show. I think kind of that voting block idea is a one school of thought, but also there's the financial part of it, right? I mean, you need to be adding schools of value, and value, to be honest, at this point is like not taking money away from everybody else, because when you look at the financial race, I mean, there is a massive gap to what Big 12 schools are making and what Indiana and Purdue are going to haul in the Big 10. It's like crazy to think Maryland, Rutgers, Indiana, Purdue are going to haul in well over double the money that Oklahoma State and TCU might haul in a year. It's odd to think. So you have to make sure you strengthen in a financial sense or not hurt yourself in a financial sense as well when you look at all these calculations. I think they do eventually add more schools. It's just a matter of who it is and where they are. San Diego State, I think it makes a lot of sense they wouldn't join. I know Big 12 wants to go out to California and get a school out there, but San Diego State, if you're not going to join and be a full member, it is expensive to have all of those schools, or all those teams rather, travel across the country all the time playing all of these sports, and the non-revenue sports. It's just really it's a financial burden. And as much as they want to join the Power 5, it feels like it's Pac-12 or bust for them when it comes to where San Diego State's place could be. So it makes sense for the Big 12 schools to say, you know what, we'd like to go west. We know Brett wants to, but it just doesn't make enough financial sense for us.
All right, Josh, appreciate you carving out some time for us. Where can people find all of your great work?
Find me on Twitter at @JoshNeighbors_. You guys can find this show at NWPod365. You guys also can find the Neighborhood Watch wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube as well. And I have to say, as BYU fans are they're probably my favorite. I'm only playing favorites, but they are the nicest and they're the most supportive. So I appreciate all the folks out there. If you all have not listened to the show yet, once again, Neighborhood Watch, all the places you find your podcast and YouTube.
All right, Josh, thanks again for joining us. And, of course, I hope to see you at Media Day next week, all right?
Yeah, we'll see you next week. Thank you so much.
There you go, Josh Neighbors. Great dude. I've actually known him for going on 3 years now.
Okay.
So does great work, and obviously covering the Big 12. It's not an easy thing to cover things at a conference level because there's so many teams.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know this, Michelle. You cover Utah, and it's in of itself. Trying to keep tabs on 14 teams.
Right.
Oof.
Yeah.
Not an easy gig.
It is interesting when people are like, well, you cover the Pac-12 too. And it's like, no. Like, I kind of have my hands very full. Sometimes I don't even know everything that's going on with Utah, if I'm being perfectly honest.
Yeah.
The job is just massive. So, yeah, then to try and, say or act like I really know what's going on. I mean, sometimes I do. Sometimes, something falls in my lap or somebody says something. But, yeah, I'm always really, really impressed with people that can cover a whole conference and or that's good at going national.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and that's the thing about this is it's an interesting gig to be able to do all that. But Josh does a great job. You heard him. He knows, he has thoughts on all this, and it's a good product. That's the best part about it. It's podcast form. He also does stuff down there in Arkansas. He and I actually went back and forth about 3 months ago. He's like, you coming down? I'm like, we'll see what happens. He's like, well, you can stay with me. So it's just kind of funny. He's looking forward to covering it because, as he says, BYU fans, anything that talks BYU, they find it.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Same thing with Utah, but they've interacted with him a lot.
Yeah. Oh, I don't doubt that. I don't doubt that.
All right. We will come back on the other side. We'll get into technical fouls, wrap up hour one of the program right here on 97.5 FM, the KSL Sports Zone.
If you're coming from the street with dirty shoes on your feet, that's a technical foul. If you switch the radio to some modern music show, that's a technical foul. If you touch the thermostat,
you'll get hit with a bat.
'Cause that's a technical foul.
You will feel my wrath.
That's a technical foul.
Personal foul, 69, offense. He was giving them the business.
A technical foul.
Welcome back to the Saturday show. Hope you all are doing well. Time now for technical fouls to talk about what's going on in the sports world. It's kind of more the negative side, or just to make fun of people. Honestly, it's kind of we dunk on people here with this.
Occasionally,
yes. But we got 3 good ones this week. Where should we start? I'm going to let Sarah start this week. Go ahead, Sarah.
All right. Well, mine has to do with basketball, and Dennis Rodman got a new tattoo. You might ask where he got it. It's on his face, and it's a tattoo of his girlfriend's face that he tattooed on his cheek.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's not done very well, if you ask me.
That's a bold choice.
Very bold choice.
Yeah, not a wife, a girlfriend. So he's really putting everything on the line with this one. But yeah, you should Google it because it's very interesting.
Googling it right now.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to check this out. Here's the thing: like, I have 2 tattoos, but I am very much of the opinion of be very careful about what you choose to do. And I purposely made mine small that if I ever get sick of them and I don't want them anymore, it's not going to be awful to get them removed. But I mean, some people go big and bold.
If anyone's going to do it, it's Dennis Rodman.
Oh, totally.
But yeah, I just was a face tattoo is already, questionable.
Yeah.
Let alone getting someone else's face tattooed permanently on your body.
Well, his girlfriend's name is Yella Yella. That's her name.
Oh.
And she spoke to TMZ. It's on the cheek. It's right there, very prominently featured.
And it's not small. It's very large.
And so apparently she told TMZ that she told him, "What are you doing? Don't do this." But he ultimately made the decision to get her face tattooed on his face. So there you go.
The audible gasp was so funny.
She looks like an alien. Like, I thought the Gucci Mane ice cream cheek tattoo was a strange choice. Whole
new level.
Yellow, quote,
Dennis Rodman.
Quote, Yellow says initially Rodman wanted the portrait to be even bigger than what it ultimately ended up being, which fills up his cheeks. I don't know how much bigger you can make it ultimately, leading her to call him both, quote, crazy, and, unquote, and, quote, a wild boy, unquote.
Well, we knew both of those things already.
Dennis Rodman.
He didn't need to get that cheek tattoo to prove that to us.
Gosh. All right. Way to go, Dennis Rodman. Continue to keep yourself in the headlines. Props to you. All right. Michelle, where are we going next?
Well, I mean, you knew we had to go here. So someone was doing this story.
Oh, I, trust me, of the 2 I had, it was one of my 2, so go ahead.
Yeah. So Britney Spears made some sports headlines this week, reaching out, trying to touch people, and then fists flew or something. And anyways, as it kind of came about, though, the situation did not play out the way that it was initially reported it played out. And
the video will always get out. TMZ got copies of it.
Yeah. So according to a police report, Spears noticed Victor Wembanyama.
Big Vic, as we call him.
Big Vic.
Okay. Yeah.
In Las Vegas, tried to get his attention. His security said, nope, not today. Don't care that you're Britney Spears. And initially it was reported that his security hit her in the face.
Yeah, her security team accused I think it's the San Antonio security team of hitting her in the face as she was trying to get his attention. Yeah, go continue.
But the video shows a slightly different story in that she actually hit herself in the face.
The security person, she comes up from behind. Victor Wembanyama is huge. He's 7'3.5" without shoes.
Tiny.
And Brittany's not big. So you watch the video. She runs up from behind, which is, don't do that, first off.
No.
And she kind of she's hopping, trying to get his attention. Apparently she's a big basketball fan. I didn't know this. I was reading up on it after the fact. But then she ends up tapping him on the shoulder. The security person, as they are trained to do, just tries to get her away and kind of swings the arm back. Doesn't necessarily hit her, but kind of pushes her away. Well, that motion ended up having her the momentum. She inadvertently hit herself in the face. So, way to go, Brittany! And
baby, one more time.
I was going to quote it if you did.
Yeah.
So.
Well, It's too easy.
Yeah, but
too easy.
And you think she would know better as a person that's in the
someone
spotlight
that has
herself.
to also deal with.
Well, she has a security team around her at all times.
Yes. So you think she would understand that might not be the best approach?
I don't know. She must have been hoping for the celeb card to like cancel that out. But yeah, you can't come from someone from behind.
No.
That's just like rule number one, celebrity or not.
Yeah,
you don't ever approach someone from behind.
You don't know what's happening. That security person is trained to protect at all costs. That's what they're paid for, and they did their job.
I was going to say, I've taken swings at people that have approached me from behind. No, you never approach from behind. Be a normal person and introduce yourself from the front.
Well, and have your security team just run up there and say, hey, Big Vic, Britney Spears is over here. Not that hard. I'm just saying.
Yeah. I was going to say, is she really a fan of Vic, or is she just trying to get her name out there again?
Well,
that could also be debated.
That's a great debate as well.
There is perhaps a mental health component to this as well. It just a lot to unpack there.
Yeah. My one real quick, hazing is back in the headlines and at Northwestern of all places. This is one of the bastions of smart kids. This is the Big Ten Stanford. This is the SEC's Vanderbilt.
This is a smart people's school first and foremost.
Yeah, so Pat Fitzgerald, Northwestern's head coach, who's been there forever, by the way, and I think he's a pretty solid coach. But he's been suspended 2 weeks without pay, stemming from an independent investigation into hazing within the football program. They're also not going to be going to their regular training camp site, which is away from campus this year due to this stuff. So here's the thing. They went 1-11 last year, which is awful. But at Northwestern, a guy like Fitzgerald, who's a legend at that school, an All-American and whatnot, he's going to keep his job because they realize kind of what they are and who they are. But this is not a good look. Just stop it.
No. This goes back to culture is important.
Mm-hmm.
And I think too many people think that they can get away with not having good culture and it won't ever come out.
Yeah.
It will always eventually come out.
Well, and the thing is, this stemmed after a complaint made after the 2022 season. So this happened just this past year.
Right.
So to your point, either something has been rotten there for a while or it got rotten, and it's on Fitzgerald not to have, A, noticed it, B, rooted it out, and C, enabling it.
Mm-hmm.
You just can't have that.
Mm-hmm.
Especially in today's age,
Oh.
it's going to come out.
Yeah.
Well, look at New Mexico
Whether
State.
it's through social media or a news outlet, it's going to come out.
Yeah.
Well, with the ubiquitous nature of smartphones, it takes not very long. And yeah.
And cancel culture is a real
Well,
thing.
and I was going to say, and these kids have power now, too.
Oh, yes.
They're getting NIL money, and so I mean, in a lot of ways, they're very untouchable at this point. So if they have a beef and a legit beef, it's gonna get out.
Yeah, crazy stuff. All right, so yeah, technical foul on Pat Fitzgerald. You gotta be on top of this stuff.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about that. All right, we will come back on the other side. I want to get into a little bit about the Utah Jazz. Summer League here in Salt Lake is done. The Jazz getting ready to take part in the Las Vegas Summer League. But also, Michelle, I don't know how much you like contract talk, but the Jazz made an offer this morning. I can understand that because I work with a guy, PK. The business of sports is not his thing, but this one kind of funny. They actually put out they have offered an offer sheet to a restricted free agent, and the way they have structured this contract, it's for Philadelphia, the 76ers.
Mm-hmm.
Well, either Joel Embiid is going to put up or he's going to shut up, and it could affect one of his teammates potentially next season money-wise. We'll talk about that next. That's a tease for you on the other side. This is 97.5 FM. 97.5 FM, the KSL Sports Zone. Welcome back into the Saturday show here on 97.5 FM DKSL Sports Zone. Michelle and Jake along for the ride on this Saturday morning. And nice poll on Rascal Flatts today, by the way. One of my favorite bands, honestly. Big fan.
See, there you go. You like country?
I do.
I couldn't have told you that was rock.
Michelle.
I'm not a country girl, but I won't hate on it either. I just don't listen to it.
Here's the thing, like Rascal Flatts, they have not put anything out super recently. They've been off the grid for a minute, but they got some good stuff from back in the day. So
I do remember when they were quite popular.
That takes me back. It was like right around 15 plus years ago when I was serving my mission. That's when when they were in their heyday. So crazy stuff, but all the same, that's a great tune for summer, by the way. Summer nights, it's just a great tune for this time of year. But nonetheless, hope you guys are all doing well. Hour 2 of the program underway here. And Michelle, let's take a minute and talk a little bit about the Utah Jazz and the NBA.
Let's do it.
So this morning, story comes out that the Utah Jazz have offered restricted free agent forward Paul Reed Jr. a 3-year, $23 million offer sheet to bring him over to Utah. He's with the Philadelphia 76ers. So they have the option to match this deal. They have until tomorrow night at 10 p.m. Mountain Time to match. The new CBA, it used to be a 3-day, like you could wait 3 days and match it. Mm-hmm. It's now 24 hours. Like they're make your decision. Like they're forcing the action. They just want to get it done.
I like that. I like that.
The interesting part about this is this week I heard I was seeing on social media some rumors of the Jazz being interested in Paul Reed. I think it was Mark Stein who I was reading his Substack. He does a newsletter that I subscribe to. Does a great job really covering the depth and breadth of the league as a whole. And he mentioned this guy named Paul Reed. Now I'll admit, I feel like I've been pretty well in the know on who a lot of the guys in the NBA are, who the Jazz are interested in. I think Ben Anderson, who's our Jazz insider, does an incredible job covering things. Mm-hmm. I had no clue who Paul Reed Jr. was.
I mean, there's always that one guy that nobody's heard of.
So he apparently was a revelation last season. He played in 69 games, more than the 64 he played in his first 2 seasons combined. So he's been in the league for 3 years.
Okay.
He was the 58th pick in the 2020 NBA draft. So he was almost undrafted. So he has beat the odds, frankly. Like when you're drafted that late in the NBA draft, a lot of teams are like, okay, you're probably going to be a end of the bench rotation. You're probably a G League guy. What can you do? Well, here's the thing. In 4 starts last season, he averaged 11.8 points and 11.5 rebounds. He's a rebounding machine. For those of you who are Jazz fans, there are some thought that he is a comparable type talent, rebounding-wise, to Paul Millsap. If you remember Paul. Mm-hmm. Rebounding legend at the college game. That's what he came in the NBA with the rep as and developed his game from there. He was a rebounding machine. Jerry Sloan loved him because Jerry Sloan's whole philosophy with guys was, okay, do you have a translatable skill that can help you succeed in the NBA? Paul Millsap at Louisiana Tech, he was an undersized power forward, but he rebounded like a madman. So Jerry Sloan said, you know what? We can work with that. And then Paul Millsap ended up, I think he signed at least 1 max contract. He's made north of $100 million in his career as a second-round pick in his own right. So this is interesting to see how the Jazz do this. But the funniest part of this whole thing, Michelle, is the whole talk around the Philadelphia 76ers over the past 2 or 3 years is with guys like Joel Embiid, mm-hmm. you probably should be making pretty deep runs in the playoffs.
Right.
They haven't done that. He was the MVP this past year. They flamed out in the second round. They lost to the Miami Heat. Like the talk around Philadelphia is, when are they going to break through? Well, the Jazz, got to give Danny Ainge and Justin Zanuck credit on this. The offer sheet here for this restricted free agent deal, and stick with me on this, is that the deal, the way it's structured here, is the first year is fully guaranteed for Paul Reed. So that you're going to pay him somewhere around $8 million this first year in that $23 million deal. But they would have to, so if Philadelphia matches this deal, which they have until tomorrow to do, they would have to guarantee $15.7 million on the final 2 years of the deal. So essentially fully guarantee this deal. If they do that, the reason they have to do that is if the team advances to the conference semifinals, a.k.a. the second round, which is what Philadelphia has flamed out in the last 3 or 4 seasons.
Right.
This is kind of funny because this is using the Philadelphia 76ers like quote unquote lack of success in the playoffs mm-hmm. against them here. Mm-hmm. And it'll be interesting to see if they want to match it, because the other thing about this is if Philadelphia matches it, it pushes them to the $165 million luxury tax threshold, and then they would also have to pay an additional $14 million in luxury tax penalties if they match this deal.
Yeah, that kind of feels like Danny Ainge made sure that he's coming to Utah.
He's trying to, at least.
I mean, that really puts the 76ers between a rock and a hard place.
And that's the thing about this. So I've been going back and forth with people on social media. So people remember the Paul Millsap deal when he was a restricted free agent the first time. Portland came in and they had, at the time, they called it the poison pill contract, where they essentially tried to make it so the Jazz couldn't match on Millsap. They just made it tough for him. Mm-hmm. The Jazz ultimately pulled the trigger and brought Millsap back, even though they absorbed they were like, you know what, we'll suck it up. The second time they did it was Wesley Matthews. Remember, Wes Matthews was an undrafted free agent, came to the Jazz, became a starter for the Jazz as an undrafted free agent, which doesn't happen a lot in the NBA. Became a really, really good player. Portland said, you know what? We're going to do the exact same thing with Paul Millsap. And the Jazz at that point were unable to match that deal, and they had to let Wes Matthews go. Wes Matthews is one of those great what-if stories. Had he stuck around in Utah, he's carved out an incredible career for himself.
I'm not familiar. I know. I know Paul Millsap. Yeah, like for
Wes
sure.
Matthews played 1 year in Utah.
Interesting.
But he's still in the league to this day.
With him.
Yeah. So let's see. I'm going to pull this up here. I'm going to pull up his career earnings. But Wes Matthews has been all over the league. He's been everywhere in his career. He is, as an undrafted free agent, Michelle. He came into the league out of Marquette undrafted, and his career earnings are estimated to have been $114.8 million.
Not bad.
Not bad. That's awesome. Good for him. And he's, by the way, he was with the Milwaukee Bucks recently this past season. We'll see what happens. I think he may have already signed again with the Bucks. I'm not 100% certain on that. But that's the interesting part about this is Danny Ainge is a shrewd manipulator, and he is, and he knows Philadelphia well from his time at Boston.
Right.
He has an idea of what their ceiling is, and he's using that against him here. This is pretty funny from Danny Ainge in the Jazz front office.
Well, I've kind of said it before, and I'll say it again. I think the Jazz are an institution that kind of has to be shrewd, and it's good to see, someone like Danny Ainge at the wheel that can kind of play those strings or play that game and pull those strings. Yes. Because again, Utah's not necessarily going to be like an LA Lakers or Miami Heat that's going to be a big draw. Like, they're just not. So you have to be creative. And part of that is putting people in tough situations. And part of it's the evaluation part and seeing something in people that kind of what you alluded to with Jerry Sloan and Paul Millsap. Do you have a skill that we can work with and develop you? And do we think that, other people are missing something about you? So, I mean, those two things combined. And again, we've talked about too, we've seen that kind of play out during his time in Boston.
Yes.
It feels like very much on the way to getting the Jazz where I think people want to see them be.
Well, see, and I agree with you on that. Now, let me also acknowledge, Paul Reed is not going to come in and be a starter for the Utah Jazz. He'd be a rotation piece because you've already traded for John Collins. That deal became official yesterday. So John Collins is officially a Jazz man. They put it out on social media. They also have signed their three rookies, one of which, Taylor Hendricks, figures to play the same position that Paul Reed plays. He's a 6'9", 210-pound forward. Well, what's Taylor Hendricks? I think 6'9", 205 pounds. Like they're
basically the same
similar
person.
Body. But the thing about this is, I think Danny Ainge sees something in Paul Reed similar to the era's past of a Paul Millsap. This guy was in the top 10 in the NBA in rebound percentage in the limited minutes he played. He averaged, for the season, 69 game played, 10.9 minutes per game. So he didn't play a ton. Field goal percentage, 59.3%. So he's got decent stats. He averaged 4.2 points per game. So this is not a guy that's going to come in and be this revolutionary piece that's going to be day one, like, wow, what a find he was. But I think the Jazz see something here, and they're like, you know what? Let's see if we can get him in here, put him with our development staff, and see what he can become in this system. And at the same time, also use Philadelphia's history against them. Also, do you guys happen to know what Paul Reed's nickname is? Anybody want to guess? Don't overthink this one. This is pretty simple. It rhymes with Paul, and it refers to the sport that he plays.
Ball.
B-ball Paul.
B-ball. Okay.
Yeah, and the other thing about this, he played his college ball at DePaul University. So B-ball Paul played at DePaul.
Goodness.
Sorry,
Okay.
it fell short.
That feels like a dad joke.
It is a dad joke.
Yeah. Okay.
Dad here. Hello.
Hey yo.
No, but here's the thing about this. I'm interested to see how it goes, but it's kind of funny that you mentioned the Jazz are being shrewd with this, and it's kind of what they have to do. It's just what the Jazz need to build their roster with.
It's when you're kind of the smaller guy in the lineup, you have to think of other ways. And it sounds, to me, at least from an outsider, kind of just looking at this, taking in what you're telling me, that's exactly what this is. This is the small guy being shrewd to try and get ahead.
All right, Michelle, are you pro trading for Damian Lillard or against trading for Damian Lillard with the Utah Jazz?
I mean, I was totally on board with it, but I haven't looked into it too much, but if that rumor's true, I mean, you don't want to purposely bring in a cancer.
Well, and that's the thing about this. Apparently, so according to Mark Medina, he's saying that Damian's considering not showing up if he's not traded to Miami.
Yeah.
Now, I'd like to think that Damian Lillard is smarter than that. That is just a stain on your reputation if you're going to threaten that type of garbage.
Well, and that's why I'm like, is this even like really, really true? Because that just sounds like a complete 180 from everything that we know about Damian Lillard.
And that's the thing about this. That's the crazy thing about all this is he apparently had his agent. He contacted. It was the Miami Herald down there. Truthfully, he wants to play in Miami, period. Aaron Goodwin, his agent, essentially said he's been making calls to franchises who have interest in Damian, and also franchises have called him, and he's told them, don't trade for him. Like, I get that his agent's trying to engineer something here, but I'm going to echo something that PK said on DJ and PK yesterday. He took the money that is going to pay him at the end of it, so he'll be 37 when his current contract ends, if I recall correctly. The final year of that deal, Michelle, is worth $60+ million. It's 60.3 or something like that. It's a huge chunk of change. He took the money, and so in this circumstance, he hurt himself by taking that extension with Portland here, and now wants out. Like he wants his cake, he wants to eat it too. I got the money, but now send me to Miami. If you're Portland, you're over there like, why should we acquiesce to your trade demand? And now his agent allegedly is making phone calls to teams saying, don't do this. Like, that's just I'm with you. I'd like to think we know Damian Lillard a little better than this. I don't think he is that dumb to not show up.
Well, this also begs the question then, is he under bad management?
Well,
because if his manager or his agent is going out and telling people, don't make a deal for my guy, I mean, that's a reflection of your client, whether you like that or not. And I think as an agent, as a manager, like you have to be mindful of that. Like I get wanting to get the best deal for your clients, especially when you have a name brand guy like Damian Lillard, but your actions rub off on and reflect on and may or may not be a true reflection of who they actually are, but that's going to follow them and potentially could impact your ability to get another good deal down the road if it ever comes up again.
Yeah.
Like, boy.
Go ahead.
It's giving spoiled little brat who's going to throw a tantrum if he doesn't get his way.
Yeah.
Well, in some ways it is. And that's the thing about this. He by the way, he easily could have, this situation would be a lot smoother. He'd probably end up in Miami much easier had he not signed the current deal that he's on, that extension that he signed. Because it would have been less years, less money, and much more manageable for him to engineer that move. Where things stand right now is like, Portland in many ways holds all these cards. And for his agent to go out there and do this is like taking – remember the Anthony Davis? Do you remember Anthony Davis when he got traded from New Orleans to L.A.?
Kind of, yeah.
His agency, I think it might have been – I don't remember which agency it was. But they were like making these comments that like he doesn't want to play for New Orleans anymore, blah, 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 blah. Like, they essentially poisoned the well.
Yeah.
And they wanted to force the action to getting him to L.A. And it ended up happening – they end up working that way. This is taking that, and it feels like, and adding to it, like adding on top of it. When this is Damian, this guy is one of the guys who has talked openly about, I don't need to be surrounded by a bunch of superstars. I can succeed. I want to be that old school player. We've had Randy Ray on DJ and PK who said that his kind of wish list of coaches he wanted to play for when he came out of Weber State was Jerry Sloan, Greg Popovich, like the old school guys. Mm-hmm. That's who he wanted to play for. If what's playing out right now, is true, this is what he's like, he put on a facade and lied to everybody, it feels like. Or things change. I don't know what to make of it.
Yeah, it's curious, but I think whatever's going on, whether it's management, agency, taking control of something that they have no business taking control of, and saying things on his behalf that they really should not be saying, or it's his direct wishes, or it's none of those things, and I don't know, some reporter, puts out something that isn't true, and now people are running with it. From your end, this needs to get fixed.
Sure. It does.
One way or another. Either you need an attitude change, if this is somehow coming from you or your agency, or you need to clear the air and say, no, that's not what's been going on. That's not what's being said. Because, you have a great reputation, or had a great reputation up to this point. That could all be coming crashing down.
Oh, yeah. It could be undone real quick. And I'm interested to see where this all lands. I do think that if, in the end, he wants to go to Miami, it may very well come to that. But there's talk out there that the Jazz have made phone calls about this and that type of stuff. Mm-hmm. If I'm in Portland, I'm not just going to completely cave in and say, okay, yeah, let's go ahead with that, Miami. You got to think about your situation, speaking of Portland. By the way, Scoot Henderson yesterday, I don't know how many people saw his debut in the Summer League. Well, for the first half he played, he looked lights out. And I know that Summer League, trust me, people are talking about Victor Wembanyama. He's a bust. It's one game in Summer League, folks. Slow your roll with the hot takes over here. Scoot did injure his shoulder, though. And that's a little bit of a concern. You don't want to see that.
Yeah. In a kind of for fun environment, you don't want that.
So, and crazy stuff all the way around, but we'll see what happens. But, yes, B-Ball Paul apparently could be a jazz man here pretty quick.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's go.
One of those crazy things.
Let's go.
All right. We will come back on the other side. We'll get to some of the other topics we have not had a chance to get to on today's show. We call it 5 Minutes Of. That's coming up next right here on 97.5 FM, the KSL Sports Zone. Welcome back to the Saturday show here on 97.5 FM, the KSL Sports Zone. Michelle Bodkin, Jake Hatch, along for the ride. Sarah producing for us behind the scenes. You just had to go country summer, didn't you, today? That's the theme.
Yeah.
I like it.
I mean, it's summertime, and when I think summer, I think country music.
Well,
so that's the theme for today.
I don't mind it one bit. I know PK would be a big fan. Kenny Chesney's his guy, by the way.
Oh, really?
Them in Old Dominion.
Okay.
Yeah. I think this year PK's got plans to see Old Dominion 4 times.
Oh, my gosh.
He's already seen him twice this year, I think.
PK?
That's a little excessive.
Oh, he's a super fan, man. And he's seen Kenny Chesney. Like, he stands in the pit with, all these other young bucks to watch Kenny Chesney. I gotta give PK credit. He's a diehard in that regard.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. I wanna be the cool person going to concerts.
You and me both. But here's the thing.
Probably not going to happen, but it's fine.
Oh my God, I like my seat. I'm already sold.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's not so much that I like my seat. I just don't like other people.
Oh, that too.
It sounds so bad.
Well, you're not wrong, though. It's like when you have your spot, you're like, okay, you know what? This is my spot.
Don't step on me. Don't elbow me. Don't encroach on my space. Don't jump on me.
PK's got some legendary stories. There was one story where a lady was like holding onto the rail, even though she wasn't, like at those concerts, she wasn't actually on the front row, but she wanted to like
try and hurdle to be in the front row.
But there was like some situation where she was reaching out, holding on to the rail, and refused to let go. Even though she wasn't acting, like she was like two or three people back essentially, but no matter what, I have to have PK tell the story again. But it's like what is going on here? But nonetheless, crazy times.
Okay.
By the way, we have had a breakup and a makeup in the time we've done the show today, by the way.
Oh, okay.
Our good friend Clinto Pete tweeted in during technical fouls and said that technical foul on Lloyd Colzone, of course, our PD here at the station, said that after 12 years, Lloyd unfollowed me after 12 years. Shake my head.
Aww.
Well, Lloyd responded, "Sir, I didn't even unfollowed you, Clint." He said, "I missed you." This is Clint responding. "I missed you, Lloyd. Welcome back. Guarantee it was another Elon bug." Shake my head. "I'll never leave you again." So this is, breakup, makeup.
Aww, we love a happy ending.
So Lloyd and Clint, good to have you guys back together.
Now if we can just get Hans and him to follow each other.
Yeah, that's a whole nother story, and that's years down the line, it feels like. Have you heard that story?
No.
They refuse to follow each other on social media because neither one will make the first move.
Lloyd, I guess, posted a picture that Hans didn't approve of.
It's a day that ends in Y with those two. I've worked with Hans and Lloyd for a decade plus at this point. I know them well. I'm proud to call them friends and compatriots here on the radio. Lloyd has posted multiple pictures, and awkward ones at that, of Hans. For him to take offense to the most recent one, and apparently they won't follow each other as a result, they unfollowed one another. Whatever. Nate's tried to Nate, our boss, boss, like Nate Dowdle, has tried to mediate it and get them to follow each other. They still don't do it.
They refuse.
Yeah.
Neither of them will be the bigger person.
Yeah. They
Okay. Well, see, here is life hack. I just purposely post unflattering pictures of myself, and then I can't be mad when someone else does it.
Hey, you take the initiative and you got out ahead of it. I like that, actually. That's a pretty smart move. You signed up for Threads, by the way?
I did.
Your thoughts?
I overall like it. I have not done a whole lot with it because, again, I've just been off this week, and so I've kept a very low profile, but I played around with it a little bit. Obviously, it needs a few tweaks, but I think, I don't know, I was talking with my BYU counterpart, Mitch Harper, this week, and the one thing that kind of excites me is if this does take off, the ability to be able to just do one thing when we post articles and have it shoot off to Instagram, Facebook, and Threads.
I hear what you're saying. The Fediverse, as they're calling it, yeah.
Would be phenomenal.
Yeah.
And shave some time off of what we do.
Sarah, you on it yet?
I am. I haven't messed around with it too much, but I think if there is a time to bring up a new social platform and have it succeed, it's definitely now.
Well, and they pushed it up to take advantage of some of the negative press coming Twitter's way. We'll see. I'm interested in it.
But yeah, I'm curious because I've already seen bugs with Meta.
Yeah.
Just with working with the Pac-12, there's been some issues with it.
Yeah.
And so we'll see how user-friendly they can make it because things come with new platforms in general like this, but hopefully it doesn't continue. Hopefully they can sort it out and get it fixed.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I'm with you, Michelle, that I think it could free up some time social media-wise. My only concern, and this is the only request I've got for it, you got to give me either a chronological timeline or give me a tab that lets me see the people that I follow. I'm sick of opening it up and seeing just some random thing that I'm like, I have no clue what's going on.
What
here.
is this? The other thing I would say is gifts. Give me the gifts.
That's pretty easy. Here's the thing. This thing wasn't supposed to launch until late this month, and they moved it up. They said, you know what? Can we get it? Can we put something out there
let's
to take advantage
or alpha test it?
Yeah, and they threw it out there and they're going to add gifts. They're going to add all that stuff to it. It sounds like that stuff's still coming. I think they said, you know what? This is not fully baked, to use the analogy.
Yeah.
but it's good enough. Let's get it out there and take advantage of the opportunity we have right now. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. So if you want to follow us, I think all of our threads.
It's exactly the same.
Yours is Bodkin KSL Sports. Mine's Jacob C. Hatch. Is yours still your...
Mine's S. Hosian 15.
S. Hosian.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So follow us. Let us know. It's the other thing about this is I'm not sure I'll ever be able to get fully up on Twitter. Twitter was like my vice. It still is my vice. But if Elon's going to kill it, so be it. I'll go down with the ship.
I will say, from like a marketing standpoint, I don't know if I love the logo for Threads. That sounds dumb, but I'm just I feel like it's doing too much.
You know what I don't like about it is that it kind of looks very close to our KSL Sports logo. And
I did notice that too.
So I'm like, wait, is this the notification from KSL Sports or is this a notification from Threads?
It does look close. The best way I've been able to describe it, I actually had a family member reach out to me last night about it. I said, it's Instagram, but with Twitter's posting ability right now, because it's a curated feed that you know how Instagram works. They're throwing up what they think you need to see.
Yeah,
you got to change it though. You got to give me that following or at least a chronological tab option.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
There's some things to work out, but I think I don't know. I think there's some potential there.
Oh, there is potential. There is no doubt.
I can work with it for a bit, see where it goes.
Yeah, we'll see. All right, let's actually talk a little bit about sports. We got RSL in action tonight, Michelle. It's Chicho Day.
Hey!
Yeah, Chicho Arango.
Finally!
The big signing for Real Salt Lake, the $6 million man. He is in the starting lineup. Well, that's what they paid for him. They paid $6 million on the transfer.
Well, I'm just laughing because that's a TV show, an old TV show. That was funny.
Yeah, but
unintentionally funny, but funny.
Yeah, no, that's the thing. So he is in the starting lineup tonight. He's supposed to make his debut. Nelson Palacio, the other Colombian they brought in recently, he's a midfielder. He actually just finished his season in Colombia. Is now signed with RSL. He could make his debut tonight as well. So it could be a fun night out at America First Field. Supposed to have a sellout crowd on hand. Fireworks, I think, tonight
I
as
was
well.
going to say, I thought I saw something about fireworks. So, because the 4th of July is over, but it's not really over. And it also bleeds into the 24th of July.
We get two 4th of Julys here along the Wasatch Front.
Oh, we do.
It's great. I love it.
And I love it when outsiders bring it up to me. They're like, did you know? I'm like, yeah, I've lived here my entire life. I've noticed.
I'm a
it's
native.
The month of fireworks.
And it's fantastic, isn't it? No.
Just don't catch the mountain on fire. That's all I have to say.
That's like the biggest requirement. Just don't catch anything on fire.
Amen to that. All right, but so big night tonight for Real Salt Lake. They welcome in Orlando City. They've got a run here. They play 3 games in 8 days once again this coming week. So they play Orlando tonight. They go to Sporting Kansas City Wednesday, and then New York Red Bulls. So they've got kind of an East Coast flavor coming up here this week. But I think I don't necessarily care who is coming. It's just they want to see what Chicho Arango can do for RSL in this lineup. He has been a guy who has proven during his time in Major League Soccer, obviously with LAFC, that he's an absolute killer in front of goal. Just give him chances, he's going to score more often than not. And that's something that RSL has been severely lacking.
Right. Yeah. No, I think a little shot in the arm, a little juice is just what the doctor ordered. And hopefully he's the guy that really truly does fix that for him, that it translates over into a new team, a new environment.
Yeah, it should be interesting. All right, I want to talk for a minute about the 60 and 60 this week, Michelle. I thought this was an interesting week on that front. So we talked last week about guys like Micah Pittman, obviously. This week was interesting to me because I think 3 of the guys that I was paying attention to this past week, I looked at it and said, wow, I think all 3 of these guys are being underrated on this list. 2 of them from BYU. Actually, no, that's 2 of them from Utah. They put BYU on one of them. That's definitely a Utah player. That's a mess up. But one of them from BYU. I thought Jacob Robinson, cornerback for BYU, sitting in the 40s, was a little underrated. Jalen Glover, a running back for Utah in the 40s, I thought was underrated. And then Travis Broughton, also at number 40. It's yesterday's announcement, him at 40. I think all 3 of those, in my mind, are a little underrated. What did you think?
I mean, with Jalen, that is tough because Utah is so deep at running back.
Yes.
And so I think someone ultimately has to, and I think he maybe is the one, because we know what we get in Mekhi Bernard.
Sure.
And I think JJ picked up on things a little bit better, which, I mean, to be expected. He's a little more, even though he made a position switch, he's a little more established in college, whereas last year was Jalen's first year. And so you're talking about a guy that's kind of drinking from the fire hose. I've heard great things about, his progress. And again, I'm like, dang, how are we going to use all these guys? Because we're also talking about Chris Curry was part of last week's mix.
Yeah, he's 50, if I recall correctly. Yeah, 50 for Chris Curry.
So it's just so much talent to work with, so much potential there, so many different ways that I think you can mix and match. I am so curious to see what this run game is going to look like for Utah.
Well, that brings up this question. I'll ask you this, Michelle. 4 running backs for Utah on the 60 and 60. Like, that's a lot of dudes.
Yeah, that is a lot of dudes.
They all going to have like 8 carries a game? What are we doing here?
I don't know. If I were a betting woman, I think JJ is the bell cow.
Okay.
I think he gets the most touches.
I think it's pretty natural to assume that.
I think you see sprinklings of other guys and combos with them and looks, because Ludwig knows how to create a look and knows how to web things out from other things. And I don't he's not a stupid man. He sees what he has available to him. And I think we're going to see some of these guys used in creative ways and creative mix-ups with JJ. So that's kind of where I would lean. We'll see. Maybe it is everybody gets like 8 touches a game or so. I don't know. I mean, and maybe some games will look like that. In years past, we've seen, one guy kind of ends up being the featured back. I'm thinking back to 2021. There were times when it was Tavion Thomas that was kind of the dominant player. TJ Pledger had his game or two. Mekhi Bernard had his game or two where he was kind of the featured back. So there's, I think, ways that you can kind of manage that and hopefully keep everybody happy. We'll just have to see how that all plays out.
Well, and that's the thing about it is you have all the options at your disposal, which is it's a great spot to be in.
Yeah, that's a better problem than being like, oh boy, what are we going to do?
We got to generate something. Yeah, so I'm just interested. Jalen, to me, I just thought he was a little underrated. And the 2 cornerbacks that I mentioned, both Jacob Robinson and Travis Broughton, I think both of them had actually really, really good seasons a year ago that got missed, if that makes sense. They just kind of flew under the radar of everybody's radar, mine included, honestly.
I can't speak on, Jacob Robinson. That's right. To Travis, JT, I mean, when you have Clark Phillips kind of on the other side of you, I think you are going to have some things missed. But this year is a prime opportunity for him, and I know that Utah's always been really high on him because he's a little bit bigger. Not a ton big, not like a huge guy, but he is bigger for a cornerback and very athletic. And so I think now that you have Clark out of the picture and people aren't going to be as focused on him, you have a prime opportunity to shine and really kind of showcase, why the coaches have been talking about you so positively. So to me, this is JT's time in that backfield.
Well, the opportunity is there. There's no doubt about that. You got to go out and seize it. We'll see what happens. I just think those two had very, very underrated seasons. But to your point, Clark Phillips, the spotlight
he's going to take a lot of attention.
Yeah, and I think it's similar.
And rightfully deserved,
sure.
too.
And D'Angelo Mandel for BYU was kind of the bigger name at cornerback. But Jacob Robinson over there, he's not a big dude. I'll say that. And I actually talked to him at the end of spring ball. I'm like, how much weight you put on? And he's like, dude, I struggle to put weight on. He's like 170 pounds.
He's one of those people. Okay.
Yeah. He's like, I eat everything. And he's like, I just struggle. I'm like, that must be an awesome problem. Now, eat whatever you want, but in the position he plays, he needs to have a little bit, but he's
a little more meat on his bones.
He made an incredible form tackle. It was the very last play in that New Mexico Bowl. He saved BYU's win. He made a form tackle on Tanner Mordecai, their quarterback, came up, squared him up, and got him to the ground and won that game.
Well, I mean, BYU's going to need a lot more of that. So
they're no doubt. Well said.
Yeah.
All right. We'll come back on the other side. We'll wrap things up. This is the Saturday Show right here on 97.5 FM, the KSL Sports Zone. Welcome back to the Saturday Show here on 97.5 FM, the KSL Sports Zone. Michelle, I got to say, this show has flown by.
It did,
Yeah,
actually.
I was like, oh, hey, here we go. But nonetheless, thank you to all of you for tuning in. A couple things before we go here, Michelle. Have you ever been to like a Scottish festival?
No, I didn't even know that
They're their thing
existed, but I guess I shouldn't be surprised.
There's like 3 or 4 of them here in the state of Utah, and there's one.
Is that the thing with the sheepdogs?
That's the sheepdog thing is its own thing.
Okay.
There's a sheepdog festival up in Midway. Yes,
right.
But they have that. So they call it like the Scottish Highland Games. There's like 3 or 4 of them spread throughout the state of Utah. I think a lot of it goes back to the LDS pioneers and a number of them from the British Isles coming over. But there's one happening down in Payson today, and my brother and sister-in-law are going down to it, and they're like, has anybody been to this? And I've been to it.
Okay.
So I'm like, yeah, I've been to it. You can go do a thing called the caper toss. It's like throwing like a...
Is that the log?
Yeah, it's like, and it's like the size of a telephone pole.
Yeah.
My brother was like, I think I could do that. I'm like, whoa, slow down.
Yeah, slow your roll.
Because I didn't explain what all it entailed. And then he looked it up. He's like, oh. I'm like, you can try it if you want, but
it might be a bad idea. That trip might end in a hospital visit.
Yeah. So anyways, the Highland Games, like some of these pseudo sporting events they have for these things, there's some interesting ones there. Ubiquitous kilts floating around, as you might imagine, as well. So just something to say, Sarah. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No.
Okay.
I think it's funny. I've seen there's a competition that like big men, like strongman competition where they push those things over, but I didn't know it was a Scottish thing. So that's interesting.
The caper toss, like you like kind of like, I call it like a fast waddle in a way, and then you like throw it. But
with your kilt on.
With your kilt on. But this is like it's like a telephone pole sized log. They ain't.
They're not small.
Yeah, they're not light.
This isn't like a little tree branch.
And it more tumbles kind of over in a way. And I don't know how you score it all. I just remember watching it and I was like,
what's going on?
Exactly. I was like, it was kind of confusing, but nonetheless. So my brother and sister-in-law went to that today, and I'm like, well, I look forward to your report back on how your experience went. But kind of funny. Like that's the thing about this is we see all these things about like different sports or sporting events, like the Nathan's hot dog eating contest from Tuesday. Apparently,
do you consider him an athlete?
No, I don't.
No.
Like Joey Chestnut, it's impressive that he can stuff his gullet with, what was it,
69.
Disgusting. And oh my God, I cannot watch that.
Here's the other thing about this. Competitive eating, there's an element of eating that does not involve you, purging yourself immediately after said event.
Yeah.
My opinion is, I'm not ever going to make any headway on this, but if you're going to have a competition like this, you got to keep that food down.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
He does. He was like, afterwards, I don't know if you saw the interview, he was like, I still have room. I'm going to go drink a couple beers.
Gross.
Right.
Oh, Lord. Here's the thing. So there was a while ago when Utah would do like funny like competitions. I'm pretty sure this was like 2014 because Dre Lewis was one of the ones that they had do this.
All right.
They brought in an ice cream truck and they had an ice cream eating contest. And it was the most disgusting thing I have ever seen. It involved water and like trying to melt the ice cream to get it down faster. And then afterwards, I remember this so vividly. Freddie Whittingham comes up to me and goes, the media can have some too. And I'm like, no, I am solid. I am off ice cream for a while. And I hate you all for it because ice cream's like one of my favorite things. I can't do it after watching that. That was just disgusting. Hey, oh, it was so gross.
We start our show with Anchorman. I'm going to quote another Anchorman as we go out the door here. Milk was a bad choice. like, here's the thing. That sounds horrific.
I'm so glad that like the games are done. I'm pretty sure after Andy Phillips broke some toes on the bike thing.
Yeah.
That was the end of those.
Oh, ice cream eating competition.
It's
Oof.
like the whole chugging a Sprite trend that's going on. Have you seen that?
No.
Where you're supposed to chug a Sprite in one sitting and it like
guess who's
everyone has like monstrous like belches afterwards.
Guess whose wife conned him into doing that crap? Hi, I'm the problem. It's me. That was a bad idea.
Terrible.
Bad.
Terrible.
I will never do that again. Like I've done like the saltine challenge in the past and whatnot. Like the stupid things we do. Let's be real. All right, so
Tide Pods. That's a totally different thing.
I know, but
like,
don't do that. That's a bad idea.
Yeah, don't die.
Yeah.
Anyways, so sporting adjacent activities. Is that what we're calling these? Like, because like
I think that's very generous.
Yeah, in some ways, yeah. Just ice cream eating competition. I like ice cream, but I don't want to down copious amounts of it.
I like ice cream, and I want to continue to like ice cream.
Yeah.
All right. Any final thoughts from you, Michelle?
No.
I had no idea that's how our final segment was going to go. I'm not going to lie.
No. You know what? I thought I was really hungry, and now I don't know that I am. So thanks, guys.
That's what we do here. We ruin your appetite. All right. We'll be back next week. It's a ringing endorsement. But, of course, we'll be back next week covering everything that happens in sports. Keep it locked on the Zone all week long. I'll have coverage live from Arlington, Texas, AT&T Stadium for Big 12 Media Days. Looking forward to that. And, obviously, we'll have everything else that's going on in sports covered for you as well. Until next time, this has been The Saturday Show on 97.5 FM, the KSL Sports Zone.